Hello. All right, moving on to page 2. This is where we get into some, excuse me, I just stepped on my microphone cord. Get into some harder constructions. Oh gosh, it's been a long day. All right, so this one says construct triangle ADF with the given parts. So to start, I need to make a starting point always. So I picked a starting point. Okay, I'm going to take my compass and I'm just going to duplicate the first segment, DA. So I measure it with my compass, measure the width, go down here, place it, make an arc. I've just duplicated segment DA. All right. Next thing, I cannot duplicate DF until I duplicate the angle. These are the 3 arcs I need to see on your paper in order to get credit for duplicating an angle. Hold on, let me delete this. All right, so I'm going to go over here to my original angle, and I'm going to make an arc any width I want. I do not want to move my compass. I want to go down here and make the same arc on my new angle. So there's my big arc. All right, I go over here. I've got 2 of my 3 arcs. The last and final arc I need is to measure the width. So I'm going to measure the width of this. Okay, intersection to intersection. I go down here. I go to my intersection. I don't have another one yet, so I'm going to make my final arc. That's a 3rd arc I need to see for your angle. And now I know exactly where my second ray should go, right there. So I've just duplicated angle D. And I did it on point D because it told me it was angle D. So the last step is I have that last segment, DF. Why do I always do that? Right, I have that last segment, DF. I need to duplicate that. So I'm going to go over here, measure it. And I'm going to go to point D because it's segment DF. And make an arc. And notice I don't need that whole ray. I just need most of it. So this is where F would be. That's my last vertice. So now I connect it. And there's my triangle. This has to be the only triangle you can create because it gives you all the appropriate parts. This last side falls into place and the angles fall into place based on the side lengths and the angle. So the 3 arcs I need to see are, first, I need to see this one that you duplicated the segment. Second, I need my arc that I did on the original angle. Then I need the width arc, and then I need to duplicate DF on that. So you need all of those arcs to get full credit on your test. Okay. All right, the next one is a kite, and I believe we've done this in class a couple times. So this one's actually not as bad as it sounds. So what I always want you to think is that in the end, a kite has 2 adjacent sides that are congruent and then another set. So we know that LO is going to need to be 2 sides. So this is one LO, and this is actually the other one. So to start, I'm just going to pick a starting point and call it L, and I'm going to duplicate LO. So I'm going to go up here, measure the width, and I'm going to go to my starting point, and I'm going to make one big arc. Because what's nice about a kite is since it has 4 points, I can pick the first 3. I've already picked my starting point, and I'm actually just going to pick 2 points on here as well. So that's O. Right now, I've gotten 2 points, so I can make half of my kite. And I've just picked those. Yours don't have to be the same as mine. All right, now the next step, again, I do that every single time. I always got to go back to my pointer. Right, and the next step is going to be to measure OS with my compass. So I've got the width. Then I'm going to go to each one of those points I selected and make an arc. And that last one, remember I could pick the first 3, but the last one has to fall into place. It's right where they intersect. So I'm going to make that. Okay, so I have LO. That second segment was OS, so I'm going to label that S, and this last one has to be T because it told me to construct a kite T. Now what I know is that LO is congruent to, oops, I don't know why I did 2 marks. LO is congruent to LT, and OS is congruent to TS. Okay? All right, now I'm going to bisect a segment. You should be thinking on making the football shape. This one takes no time at all. So I'm going to go here, go over halfway, make half of your football. Okay, now I'm going to flip to F and make the other half of my football. And when it says bisect a segment, or in other words, find the midpoint, all you're doing is taking your straight edge. Now you don't need this line, that's my straight edge though. and you just need to mark the midpoint. So I marked the midpoint. I don't need the line. That's just my straight edge. So I've marked the midpoint. Now, a lot of you got the statement, make sure you mark your diagram. You need to mark that D, and we can call that M, if we want to say the midpoint. DM is going to MF, okay? Right, now the next one's going to look very familiar. Construct a perpendicular bisector. The only difference is, instead of using the point, I need the whole thing. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to start at F this time. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to go over halfway, make half of my football. Now I'm going to go over to D, make the other half of my football. And in this case, I want to bisect it, so I'm actually going to put the segment in. Now I know two things about that segment. I know that it's perpendicular because it's called a perpendicular bisector, and I know that those two sides are congruent. Okay? All right, construct the perpendicular line from DF to point C. Now those of you thinking, oh, I have so many constructions to remember, this is the same as the altitude construction. So I go over here to point C. It tells me to start at point C. And I extend my compass so it's farther than the segment, and I make a nice arc. Now you can make it small if you wanted. I could have made it bigger. And notice if I make it bigger, it goes off my line. That just means I need to extend my line, but we're not going to do that. So I have my original one. I go to the intersections. Okay. Remember, this is like me finding the endpoints because I don't really have a segment here. I have a line. So I'm going to make an arc from one intersection. I'm going to go to the other intersection and make another arc. And where they intersect is where my line's going to go through. So I'm going to start at point C and draw a line nice through that point. And the only thing I know about is perpendicular. It's clearly not the middle. Okay? Right, next one, construct an angled bisector. It's very similar to the one we just did, except now I'm only concerned about the angle. So I'm going to use this angle. I can make an arc however big I want, but it has to cross the two angle sides twice. Unlike the previous one where it has to cross the opposite segment twice. Then I'm going to go to the intersection, make an arc, go to the other intersection, make another arc. And again, whenever I get two arcs intersecting, that tells me that's where I should draw my, this one's actually a ray because it's an angle bisector. So that could continue on forever. And the markings we need is to say is this angle is congruent to this angle. So the angle bisector is. Right? Now we're moving on to constructing an equilateral triangle. All right, that's the exact same thing as a 60-degree angle. So they give me this nice segment over here. I need to pick a starting point. I'm going to go over here and measure the length of my segment. Right, and I'm going to draw my first side. Now what's nice about an equilateral triangle is I never have to move my compass. I have my first side done. I don't have to move my compass. I'm going to make an arc from one end point. And I'm just going to flip over here, make another arc. And where they intersect is my third vertex. I did not have to change the width of my compass ever because it's an equilateral triangle. So I can either construct the whole triangle by connecting all three sides, or if they just ask me to do a 60-degree angle, I really don't need that last side, so I'm just going to leave it. So I know that this is 60 degrees. Now the best way to get a 30-degree angle is to just bisect it, and that's the one we just did before this. So the angle bisector means I go to my angle, I make an arc however big I choose, as long as it goes through the two sides. I go to the intersection, I make an arc. Oops, I'm moving my thing. I go to the other intersection, I make an arc. And anytime I get two intersecting arcs, I draw my ray. So this is equal to this one, which means that both of these have to be 30. Now the nice thing about a 150 is I don't need to construct anything else. Okay, I'm going to show you a trick. All I got to do is take my original segment and extend it. If this is 30, I should use a different color. If this chunk's 30, this whole side has to add to 180 with 30, so it has to be 150 degrees. Okay, so you don't need to do any new construction if they ask you to construct a 150-degree angle. You just have to get the 30 in and then the opposite of that has to add to 180, so you just extend the line out. The same thing is going to be true for a 90, 45, and 135. So 90 is nice. We just need to use the football shape. So I make any segment I want. Yours could be shorter than mine. Yours could be longer. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go here. I got to go bigger than halfway. Let's use a different color. Okay, and I'm going to make, oops, I'm going to make, I'm going to make the first half of my football. I'm going to flip it around. Make the second half of my football. And I'm going to draw my segment in. And that was easy. I've just made a 90-degree angle. To get a 45, half of a 90 is 45. So I'm going to bisect my original. So I'm going to go here, make that much smaller. I'm going to make an arc. Okay, notice it goes through these two sides. That's good. Those are my two intersections. I'm going to make another arc from the intersection. And I'm going to make another arc from the next intersection. And that's what tells me where my ray is. So I know that this angle and this angle congruent, they both are equal to 45. So again, if this side's 45, this side has to add to 180. Well, 180 minus 45 leaves me with 135 degrees. So this whole angle darkened in red right there, from here to here, is 135 degrees. You do not need to do any new constructions for that. Right? So I think we finished off the third page. I'm going to save that bottom one on the third page for the next video because it's all about medians, altitudes, angle bisectors, and perpendicular bisectors. So I have one more video if you want to get the last 4 problems.